You haven't lived there in years. You've changed cities, changed jobs, maybe even changed who you are entirely. And yet, night after night, there it is again. The old house, your childhood home. Sometimes it looks exactly the way you remember it. Other times it's slightly off. The walls are darker, the rooms rearranged, a strange sense of something missing. Maybe you're wandering through the hallway, maybe you're locked outside, or maybe you're just standing there, watching your younger self from a distance. And when you wake up, you can't shake the feeling that it meant something. You just don't know what. Most people chalk it up to nostalgia, a weird dream, a trip down memory lane. But what if it's not that simple? What if your subconscious is bringing you back to the most familiar place in your life? Not because of comfort, but because there's a message you've been ignoring. A buried truth. A pattern repeating itself. Or a part of you, long forgotten, quietly asking to come home. Dreams about your childhood home aren't just memories playing tricks. They're emotional maps. And if they keep showing up, it's because your inner world is shifting, maybe in ways you haven't fully acknowledged yet. Whether you're going through a transition, feeling stuck, or questioning who you've become, your mind may be sending you back to the beginning. Not to relive the past, but to understand what still lives there. In this video, we're going to break down the 5 real reasons you keep dreaming about your childhood home, and why one of them might completely change the way you see yourself. Because what you find in that house isn't just memory, it's truth, and it's trying to tell you something you're finally ready to hear. The first thing to understand is that your childhood home isn't just a building. It's your emotional blueprint. It's the place where your nervous system was first wired, where you learned what safety felt like, or what it didn't. When you dream about that house, you're not just revisiting memories, you're revisiting the original environment that shaped how you respond to stress, love, fear, and connection. And that's why these dreams feel so strange. They're not about architecture. They're about emotion. They're about the patterns you unconsciously repeat as an adult, often without realizing they were born in those very rooms. Maybe the house in your dream is exactly as you remember it. Familiar furniture, childhood toys, that creaky floorboard outside your room. Or maybe it's different, darker, distorted, oddly quiet. Either way, the house is your inner world. And when your subconscious brings you back there, it's asking you to pay attention. Because something you're dealing with now, a relationship, a decision, a life shift, is pulling from the same emotional playbook you learned as a child. This is especially true when you're facing emotional triggers or cycles that feel frustratingly familiar. Maybe you keep ending up in relationships where you feel unseen. Maybe you struggle to set boundaries. Maybe you constantly seek approval without knowing why. These behaviors didn't start yesterday. And the house, it's the place where they were quietly wired into you. Dreaming about your childhood home can be your mind's way of saying, look here. This is where it started. It's not about blame, it's about understanding. Because once you trace those feelings back to where they began, you stop repeating them blindly. And that dream, it becomes less about going back and more about finally moving forward. There's something hauntingly beautiful about dreaming of your childhood home and seeing yourself there, not as you are now, but as you once were. A younger version of you, playing in the backyard, hiding in a closet, sitting alone at the kitchen table. These dreams aren't just flashbacks, they're invitations. Your mind is showing you a version of yourself that you've outgrown, forgotten, or left behind. And it's asking if maybe, just maybe, you've left behind more than you should have. As we grow older, life has a way of sanding down our edges. The parts of us that were once bold, curious, creative, or wide open start to dim under the weight of expectations, disappointment, and survival. And before you know it, the version of you that once laughed without reason or believed in things, without needing proof, becomes a ghost in your own story. But your subconscious never forgets. And when it needs to, it brings that part of you back. Not to dwell in the past, but to remind you of what you still carry. Dreaming of your childhood home can be a signal that you're craving reconnection, not with the physical place, but with the person you were before the world told you who you had to be. It might be the part of you that used to create, before criticism shut it down, the part that trusted people, before betrayal made you close off, or the part that felt free, before responsibility made everything feel so heavy. These dreams ask a powerful question. What part of you have you abandoned in order to survive adulthood? And when you see that younger version of yourself, not just in memory, but living inside your dream, it may not be a coincidence. It may be an invitation to reclaim something you were never meant to lose. Sometimes, the childhood home in your dream isn't warm or nostalgic at all. It feels strange, cold. The walls look off, the rooms are rearranged, or you walk through a door and suddenly you're in a part of the house that never existed. Maybe the house is falling apart, cluttered, or eerily empty. And while everything in the dream says it's your childhood home, nothing about it feels safe. This isn't just dream logic. It's your subconscious pulling back the curtain on emotional disconnection. Or worse, unresolved trauma that's still living in your body whether you talk about it or not. When the house looks damaged or unfamiliar, it's often a symbol of how you currently relate to your past. Maybe you've blocked out parts of your childhood. Maybe you've buried uncomfortable emotions to protect yourself. Anger, fear, shame, or loneliness. But buried doesn't mean gone. And your subconscious knows when the foundation you've built your identity on has cracks in it. It shows you the home that raised you, but not the way it was. The way it felt when your emotional needs weren't met, when you didn't feel heard, when something broke and no one talked about it. These dreams often emerge during times of stress or transition, when the protective walls you've built around yourself start to weaken. You might be going through something now that mirrors those early experiences, feeling small, lost, or out of control. And so your brain takes you back to where that pattern first formed. Not to punish you, but to wake you up. Because you can't heal what you won't look at. And if the house in your dream is falling apart, your mind may be telling you it's time to stop pretending everything inside is still standing. There's a strange pattern with dreams about your childhood home. They often come right before something major shifts in your life, a career change, a relationship ending, a spiritual breakthrough, or even a health scare. And at first, it doesn't make sense. Why would your brain take you backward right before your life moves forward? But that's exactly the point. When your identity is about to shift, when the version of you that you've known for years is being stripped away, your subconscious brings you back to the place where that identity began. The childhood home becomes a kind of emotional launch pad. Before something new can begin, your mind needs to revisit the original blueprint. This is especially true if you're going through a period of uncertainty, that in-between space where one chapter has ended, but the next hasn't quite taken shape. You may feel restless, ungrounded, or like nothing in your current life feels quite like yours anymore. That's when the dream shows up. You're back in your old house. You're wandering through the rooms. You're watching your younger self live in a world you've outgrown. And underneath it all is a deep, quiet message. Pay attention. Something's ending. Something's coming. The childhood home isn't just where your life started. It's where your first sense of identity was built. Who you were expected to be. How you learned to cope. What you were praised or punished for. And when a new life phase is approaching, one that might force you to rewrite those rules, your mind returns to the foundation. Not to relive it, but to examine it, to ask if it still fits. Because transformation rarely begins with action. It begins with reflection, and your dreams already know that, even if you don't yet. There's a certain kind of dream about your childhood home that doesn't feel like a memory or a flashback. It feels like a search. You're walking through rooms looking for something you can't name. Maybe a door appears where it never existed, or you find yourself in a room you didn't know was there. In some versions, you're locked out of the house entirely, or someone else is living in it and won't let you back in. These aren't just odd details. They're deeply symbolic. Because in dreams, a house is never just a house. It's you. And when you can't find your way in or feel like you don't belong there anymore, it's a sign that a part of you, a real, emotional, buried part, is trying to come home. These dreams often show up when something in your waking life has disconnected you from your own identity. You've spent years playing roles, following routines, meeting expectations, until one day you realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. And your subconscious, unable to say this out loud, gives you a metaphor instead. You're lost in your own home. You're searching for something you forgot existed. You're standing outside, unsure if you're allowed back in. It's unsettling, not because of the dream itself, but because of what it reflects. The quiet grief of becoming a stranger to yourself. But there's hope in these dreams too, because the act of searching means something inside you still remembers who you were before the world told you to be someone else. The house isn't rejecting you. It's calling you back, not to live in the past, but to retrieve something essential, a truth, a voice, a feeling, something that once defined you, and still does, beneath everything you've built to survive. Dreams about your childhood home aren't just strange detours into your past. They're emotional messages wrapped in familiar walls, and if they keep returning, it's not because you miss the house itself. It's because something inside you is still tied to what that house represents. Beginnings, identity, memory, pain, safety, loss. Whether the dream is peaceful or chaotic, detailed or surreal, it's trying to show you something you've forgotten or maybe avoided for years. It's not nostalgia, it's a signal, a breadcrumb trail leading back to a part of you that's still holding on, still waiting to be seen, still trying to find its way forward. Maybe your life is shifting. Maybe you're feeling unmoored, no longer who you used to be, not yet sure of who you're becoming. And so your subconscious walks you through the halls of your past, not to trap you there, but to remind you of what shaped you and what still lives in the corners of your emotional blueprint. It brings you back to the bedroom where your imagination ran wild, or the kitchen table where you felt small, or the front porch where you dreamed of getting out. These aren't just places, they're anchors, and when life starts to feel uncertain, your mind returns to where it all started, to help you remember who you were before the world layered over it. So if your childhood home keeps showing up in your dreams, don't ignore it. Don't dismiss it as just a memory. Ask yourself, what part of me is trying to come home? What truth have I outgrown but never resolved? Because sometimes the most powerful transformation doesn't come from becoming someone new. It comes from reclaiming the parts of you that were never meant to be left behind.